Pinball circuit activated.
Steve Austin, astronaut, a man barely alive. Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology.
All right, episode 2, $6 Million Man. We are, in this episode, what we're going to be doing is gutting this cabinet and starting on the structural repair. And also in between that, I'm going to be continuing to work on the playfield swap. So step 1 is to gut everything here. I put it all in a little tote off to the side so it stays together. And that way when this is ready to go back together, it's all put together. Remember, always document. So I've already taken a video of the inside of this cabinet so that I know where everything goes when it goes back. And I'm just going to remove everything. The only tools that you need for this are a screwdriver, obviously, a nut driver, a hammer, and some pliers, some needle nose pliers to pull out staples to get out the this grate. And you need one of these. So this is a pretty stiff, like a chisel almost. You can get it in the paint department with all of the spackling and the blades that you use for that. And I'll show you how I do this in a bit. But to get these side rails up, you've got to pull that inside and kind of wrench these little spiral nails out, and then I'll show you how to get them out from there. So if you don't have one of these, get one. At least if you're working on a Bally, Gottlieb, or early Williams cabinet. I believe they used the spiral nails as well back then. So let's get going. Quick point when you're documenting these cabinets, make sure that you take very special caution and document where all of these grounding straps go, because you can see there's a lot of them in here and you just got to get them back in the right spot. So just take extra caution, make sure you know exactly where all those go. Quick tip on any switches that you're leaving intact, like these flipper button switches, just wrap them in blue painter's tape because otherwise those little leaves on the switches will come apart and you'll have to remember how they go back together, and it's not easy, so just wrap them. All right, let's talk about how you move these rails. Again, get yourself a little chisel, wide based. You're gonna go up, tap it up, and just sort of pry it out. You may have to get close to the actual nail to get it to move. Now, I'm not going to reuse these, so I'm not all that worried about the rail itself. If I were going to reuse the rail, I'd be a lot more careful at this step to not bend the rail. Once you get the spiral nail just barely out, you can kind of rotate it and it'll come out of there. Don't try and pull the spiral nail straight out because it's really hard to do that way. You just rotate it, what is that? Counterclockwise. So we're just gonna right up to the nail, pull it out, and we'll get just a little bit of it available. Counterclockwise. All of those. Now for the last one, I just use the rail itself and just bend up just a bit. This one's usually not in there very tight anyways. It's just a placeholder than anything. And voila, side rail off. All right, now we can look at our glass channel here. This one is actually not stapled in, which is good. You have to pull the staples otherwise. So here I try and be careful, same tool, and just wedge it out of here and try to not break it, because these are, I mean, they're not that expensive. They're, I don't know, only 15 bucks a piece, but still, if they're not broken and you don't need to replace them, you can just wash them in soapy water and it'll be fine. Glass channel. And I'll keep on one piece, didn't break. There we go. Rail number 2. Which is not good. So there you go. So you can see, you know, the fade from the original white down to this yellowed white, and then the red actually held up pretty good. But when you're picking colors, you know, I mean, unless you want an old look, you always want to go with the original. So find a color swatch from where it's been covered, and that'll give you what the original color was. It's helpful on blues. Blues will help you a lot that way. So this will be cool when it's done. But that is one gutted cabinet. Just in case anybody's curious about what I do with fasteners, I just get one of these little organizational boxes. And I put them all in here, that way they're all together. And I don't lose them. You can use Ziploc bags if you want to, that works. I've just had Ziploc bags run away on me before, so I just stick them all like this, close it up. There's all your fasteners for your cabinet. Stick it with all your parts and you're done. You do want to replace these feet on the back. So I just get them out with the same chisel I use for my side rails. And then I buy new ones. They sell them at the hardware store or Walmart, whatever. Just be aware, these Bally ones have metal feet. And so they're a little interesting to get out, but they're 3-pronged. So you just got to figure out where the prongs are and get your chisel in between there, or your screwdriver, whatever it is you're using. And you can get them out. Tetanus awaits. Okay, just to show you the point at which I stop when I am gutting. The other thing I will do is before I paint, I will protect this with a piece of newsprint and some masking tape around it, just so that doesn't get painted on. And there's one more I saw somewhere, maybe not. But I'll protect that, and I'll also mask these off when I paint, and I'll come back in and polish them by hand. I think I mentioned before, but these are nails, and I really have a difficult time getting them out. Number one, without messing them up, and number two, without bending this plate. So I've just decided on these games to just tape this off with some tape and paint around it and then polish it later. You can see, hopefully, that we have a split here in this corner. So what I'm gonna do is regular wood glue, and we're just gonna put it in here and get as much as we can into this seam with toothpick. I just let it kind of run down the side. Kind of bring it in. Glue it up as best I can. You can kind of spread it a little bit. Get the glue in there better. So now what I'm gonna do is get a couple clamps. These are long pipe clamps. And I'll put one here. And I'll put one on the other side. Yeah, there we go. It's been about 12 hours since I glued and clamped this, so let's unclamp it. Let's see what we have. All right, so you can see that's come together nicely. What I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna fire some brads in here just to give it a little bit more stability. And I'll tap those in a little bit before I Bondo, and that way it'll be nice and stable, and these brads will kind of disappear. To fix that right there. But my thought is this way it's not going to come back apart in the future. Come on. Put one up here. All right. That should be pretty solid now. So let's fill this corner. You can see there's a chunk out here. So what I use for corners and structural areas is this Bondo glass. It's got fiberglass in it already. It's really goopy and not great to work with, but it works. So put some hardener in it. Doesn't take a ton of hardener with Bondo. Get rid of this one. Just mix it up real good. With the regular Bondo, you can kind of tell by the color. This stuff is not so much because it's already kind of this weird green color, so I just mix it in there. Real good. All right, let's take a goop. See how goopy it is? It's kind of gross. So we're just gonna spread this on here. And I'm trying to just get this in one shot. So I'm gonna kind of put extra on, knowing that I will have to come back and sand this back later. Just get this corner, just to get it kind of, it's got a little bit much on here. Bring it down, and I'll just come over the edge a little bit too. That's, put a little bit more on the corner here. Just bring this down. And you might notice I put a piece of wax paper in the leg bolt hole. And the idea there is that the Bondo doesn't get down into the threads of the leg plate, because that is not fun to try and fix. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Just gonna bring this over. All right, we'll let that cure. Go from there. Quick progress update. You can see I have accomplished my least favorite phase of any cabinet restoration, which is sanding all of the old paint off. So that's done. I'm currently doing repairs to the backside. So this entire strip delaminated, so I've re-glued it and it's currently drying. I had to make a new strip for this because it was gone. So this is a piece of just scrap wood that I have that I've cut, and I'll sand down to be flush once it's done. We had a little bit of delamination here as well, so I've glued that up. And then you can see there's a tiny bit more delamination back here. Oh, there's that. And so I will clean this up as best I can and get it to be a little more stable. Just so it's fairly stable once we get it all together. I don't think I'm gonna mess with this. It's not that big of a deal. I just want the bottom to be stable. It's not a new cabinet, it's an old cabinet. So we're just gonna do the best we can and try and make it to where it doesn't disintegrate anymore. On the cabinet itself, you can see, there's our staples that we put in. I'm gonna have to fill those. I'll tap those in with a screwdriver and fill back on those. The cabinet itself, I sanded back with 80 grit sandpaper, and I've done some of the filling you can see already. This was a big chunk that was out of the back. This is the area that was all chewed up. So you see I still have a lot of filling to do there. And I'm gonna do this with also the fiberglass Bondo just because it's on a corner. And regular Bondo, if it's on a corner and it happens to get knocked, it'll chip right out. But like this stuff on the back, I can do with regular Bondo, that's fine. So, I'm gonna get some more fiberglass Bondo on this. Oh, one other thing, just a tip. You have to solve these issues. These are little delamination problems where the glues come loose. And wherever you see that, you either have to glue it down really well, or what I generally do is just take it back to good glued wood, because if you don't, this little movement in the wood, you will see in your final finish, and it's not pretty. So make sure you cut all of this out, or make sure it's fixed really well first. It's kind of like cancer. You got to cut it out before you can fix it. So just get rid of it as best you can. All right, we'll keep going. Here's the current status of the bottom. I'm gonna go ahead and call this good enough. As you can see, I've replaced this back piece. This piece has been glued back. It was kind of separating a bit. We still have a chunk out here, but it's solid and it's not gonna keep flaking apart, so I think it's fine. And then this piece has been glued back on. So I'm calling the bottom side good enough. And we're gonna put it on some sawhorses outside because it's a decent day out, and get this thing ready to prime, hopefully. In the process of stripping the head, I found an issue. So we have bottom that's separating out a little bit here. So I'm just gonna glue that up and clamp it and get that fixed. So a little bit of an issue here at the bottom, big chunks out of it. So I'm gonna have to rebuild that with fiberglass Bondo, I think, and see if I can get it to look better. Update time. So first coat of primer is on. Basically what I did was, you guys saw all of the fiberglass Bondo work on the corners. This was one of them right here. And then I went back, sanded it back, and put regular Bondo over more of the areas that were just kind of had chunks out of them and stuff. The back, there were a bunch of chunks out of it, if you recall. Those are all gone. So I went ahead and did the underside first, because that way, once this is cured, the next coat, I'll flip the game over and do the sides and the top and the insides. And that way that's all done, and this just gets one coat and then can sit on the bottom for the rest of the time. Actually pretty happy with the way the cabinet came out. So what'll happen here is this will cure overnight, and then I'm gonna come back and sand it back just a little bit with probably either 150 or 220 grit, and then I'm gonna shoot a second coat of primer on it, and that'll be the last coat of primer. And I have the base color, which is just white, already. So I'm hoping I can shoot base color on this game maybe by, let's see, today's Sunday, maybe by Wednesday or Thursday in a couple of days. I do like to let the primer, once I shoot the final coat, I like to let it cure for 36 to 48 hours just to make sure it's good and cured before I shoot the top coat on top of it. And then it'll get 2 coats of top coat, sanded between, and then the top coat I let cure for about 3 to 4 days before I go try and stencil over it. But really my goal this weekend was to get all of the Bondo work done, get this thing primed, and get that process started. Here is the head. So you can see there was a lot of damage on the back. There's still a few tiny little spots that I'll come back over with some glazing putty and get. And this is still not quite dry yet. But then same thing will happen. I'll glaze over this, sand it back, 1 more coat of primer. But I think the head's coming out pretty good. There was a bunch of issues over here on this little rail, and I got a majority of them. There's still some issues that I'll try and clean up a little bit better, but it looks a lot better than it did. Like this little dent here, I'll try and fix. But that's kind of the stuff you see after your first coat of primer, you know? So as I sand it and use glazing putty and get different things done, it'll get better and better and better. And I think it's actually going to come out pretty good. I'm hopeful. So, all right, done for the day. Base coating day. So what I've got on this right now is 2 coats of primer, sanded in between with 150 grit on my random orbital sander. And then I've done 1 final sand here with 150 grit just to get it some tooth. There's 1 spot on the head that was a little area of delamination that I had to cut out. You can see it in the little pink there. That's some filler that's in there right now. I might have to fill that a little bit more after I shoot this first coat of color. We'll see what it looks like. What I'm using, this is Ace Hardware. I don't know if y'all can see this or not. This is Clark and Kensington, okay? And the key for me that I found is I use this acrylic alkyd enamel. It's acrylic-alkyd enamel. So it's water-based. And I played around with a lot of different paints over the years, and I've had issues before with paint delamination once you start stenciling. Like this, the paint, certain kinds of paint will pull up with the stencil and then you have a mess. So this one I've had good success with. This is my 3rd or 4th game to stencil with this type of paint. And I haven't, knock on wood, had delamination issues yet. So we'll see. One thing I do recommend, and we'll go through that as well. I'm gonna do a coat of the base color, let it dry for about 36 hours, sand it back with just, again, like 150 grit just to give it some tooth, do a second good coat, and then I let that dry and cure for at least 4 to 5 days before I start to stencil. I really just want the paint to be as solid as possible, because if it's still a little soft, it seems more likely that it pulls up with the adhesive on the stencils. So I'm gonna thin this down. It's about 20% with water, and I'm gonna show y'all what that looks like here in just a second. So this is the paint. It comes out really thick from the can. So what I've done is I've thinned it 10%, maybe 15%. And you can kind of feel from how it's stirring where you want to be. So I don't know if y'all can see that or not, but it's not typical airbrush consistency, which is like skim milk. All right, so I've got this thinned down. This still might be just a little bit thick, so what I usually do is do a little test case. So put just a little bit in there. And if you're too thin, it's gonna run, obviously. If you're too thick, you'll get a lot of spitting out of the nozzle and a lot of little pieces, clots and clumps of paint that'll come out. So I'm gonna try and spray this first and see how it goes and see if I need to thin it anymore. do the test on the back. So that's actually really good. So I'm going to go ahead and pour the rest in here. And we're going to go ahead and paint this cabinet. So that actually sprayed really well, nice and smooth. It was about the right consistency, didn't run, good spray. You'll notice that I went over it several times. Again, just don't put on a super heavy coat, it's gonna run. That's why I like to kind of do the head and the cabinet at the same time. I can spray the cabinet, go over work on the head while the cabinet's kind of flash drying a little bit, spray the cab again, go back to the head, etc. One little point, when I clean up these purple Harbor Freight guns, you want to really make sure you get them as dry as possible, because especially the nozzle tip will rust. So, and that'll shorten the life of your gun. So I use a little spray tip thing, and I dry them off and then spray them out as best I can, and then let them air dry, so that I don't put them away wet, because that just rusts them up, and then you won't have as much life out of your gun. So I'm gonna let this dry for a couple hours. I'll move it back in the garage, and then I'm gonna let it dry and cure for about 36 hours or so. Today's Friday afternoon, so I'll probably sand this back and spray the second coat on Sunday afternoon, just to give it a good chance to dry and set up. I'm hoping that I got the inside well enough that I can flip it on its top next time and get the bottom with the second coat, and then that way I'm done painting. So that's it. It's gonna be the end for this video. I'm gonna go ahead and do the second coat. I'm not gonna video that, it's boring. So next video will be playfield swap and stenciling. Thanks for watching.